You're listening to the Sticks in the Six podcast. Here are your co-hosts, Andrew Forbes, Peter Barricchini, and Alex Hobson.
Good evening, folks, and welcome to episode 167 of Sticks in the Six podcast. I'm your host, Andrew Forbes, as always, here with Peter Barricchini, and our guest host tonight, Spencer Lazary, over at the Hockey Writers, writes alongside Peter and myself. Spencer, welcome to the show. How are you doing, buddy?
Thanks for having me, guys. I'm doing good. Excited for the season to get started.
That's right. We're kind of in the dog days of the summer. We got a little bit of news to talk about when it comes to our Leafs, but yeah, it's been a slow running the last couple of weeks. Peter, how you doing, buddy?
Yeah, doing good. I mean, really not a whole much to talk about, but we do have some things, regarding the Leafs this week. So you know what? Any bit of content really helps at this point because, I mean, news is silent on the team front, and until September creeps around, like towards the end of August, that's when everything starts to build up, the anticipation and everything like that. But yeah, overall, doing good. Just getting ready to chat with you guys and to kick out another episode.
Well, obviously the Edmonton Oilers knew that it was going to be a slow news week for us Leaf fans, so they decided to throw a little extra spice into the mix this week. They hired Stan Bowman, brought him back after a 2.5-year hiatus. Obviously, we all know it had to do with the Kyle Beach, we won't call them shenanigans, but the Kyle Beach stuff that went on a few years back, and the Aldridge stuff that happened. Peter, I'll throw it to you first, buddy, but this is kind of polarizing news. It's not there's some that are on one side, some that are on the other side. There's not really too many that find themselves right in the middle. But Peter, what are your thoughts on Stan Bowman returning to the NHL and the Edmonton Oilers hiring him as soon as they had the opportunity to?
Well, if you were on Twitter earlier today, you could tell that everybody did not sit right with anybody. It did not sit right with me either, considering the fact that, he was just reinstated 14 days ago, and now all of a sudden he already has a job, considering, the pain, torment, and agony that, Kyle Beach went through, and every other, victim, whether it was in the Chicago Blackhawks system further down the road, in another situation in regards to the one that committed these acts. I really think that there's a sense that, whenever there's a second chance given, it just happens way too quickly, and there's not enough room for accountability or anything like that. And, there is the fact that, Sheldon Kennedy came out. He did help, Stan Bowman through the process to learn from his mistake, not necessarily mistake, but learn through what happened, what he did wrong, and to continue going forward and to lead by example is what he said. And that's what he needs to do. But I mean, damage is already done with what happened with the Chicago Blackhawks system. It was a complete failure on their part, and it started with him just, looking a blind eye. That really can't happen. I'm glad that, Sheldon Kennedy is giving that reassurance that he did work with him. He did put in the work. Great, but it just seems like it happens way too often that whenever somebody comes in, there's a second chance just given right away and not any time for a reflection or seeing how they can manage themselves in a certain situation. And this is one of those instances where it happened too quickly, and not everybody has forgotten that situation. I mean, it's still fresh in everyone's minds, and there still needs to be accountability, and he's holding it to himself right now, but it's going to stay with him from here on out. And if he wants to build a newfound culture in Edmonton, kind of ironic, really, considering what the culture was with the Blackhawks, great, but, you're going to have to get a lot of people on your side and try and convince them otherwise, because you're still being, in that negative light because you were at the center of everything, along with Joel Quenneville and everybody else that was involved. So a lot needs to be done. Great that, he took the steps and he helped. And again, first and foremost, Sheldon Kennedy, who was the one at leading this whole entire thing with the respect group, glad he took charge and, helped them out through or him out through this process, because who better to learn from than him? But it's still way too early for me. I really just can't see that. You can't wait it out. You can't really tell me that there was a better hire than Bowman, because towards the tail end of his tenure with the Hawks wasn't that great anyways. You're telling me that he was the best option or the best man for the job. So both on the hockey front, both on the culture slash, side of everything as well. I'm kind of drawing a blank there for a second there. That's just how I feel right now. But yeah, still a long ways to go for me to be convinced that there's actually any sort of change at this point.
Spencer, obviously some hot news coming off the press today with Bowman signing in Edmonton. What's your take of seeing a guy like that back in the NHL, fairly quickly after being reinstated?
Yeah, it makes me think why the NHL put out that statement just after free agency, saying that he was they're gonna reinstate him. Like a month before, Toronto was looking for a head coach. People said Joe Quenneville. The NHL said not happening. Edmonton needs a GM. They go through their options. All of a sudden, it's happening. I covered this piece actually with the Hockey News, and they said, when I was reading Sheldon Kennedy's article, it seemed like he was the catalyst behind it. But one thing that I think is forgotten in this is kind of reminds me of the Akeem Alou situation, where the player then gets left behind.
Mm-hmm.
So I almost think that it should have been a stipulation that Stan Bowman then has to hire Kyle Beach in some kind of role. Why does he get to go on with his career and be the GM of potentially one of the best NHL teams next season, and Kyle Beach gets to do what? Does anyone really know what Kyle Beach is doing? That's a problem here. So, I mean, NHL is traditionally that white old man culture, and it just keeps happening. They keep giving the same guys. Look at the coaching carousel. It's the same 5 guys. They get fired, they get hired. Why couldn't Dale Hunter or Mark Hunter or any kind of other OHL GM coach, why couldn't they get any offer? It's just the same. It's just kind of a piss off. And usually I don't really like to get involved in these situations, especially on Twitter, because everyone's got their own opinion. But I mean, to me, it's kind of just a piss off to see Stan Bowman then get his look, and John Quenneville is probably going to be next.
Yeah, it's the beauty of the Sticks and the Six podcast. We kind of get involved in all the unnecessary news when it comes out, but yeah, I mean, I'm glad you brought up the coaching carousel, and it is very much a coaching carousel throughout the NHL. Once in a while, you see these new guys come in, Sheldon Keefe being one of them, more recently. But you do see the same guys that come back in. You see the same GMs that come back through. They how many times did we go back to Ken Hitchcock before he finally said, you know what, I'm taking a break from being a head coach or a GM or what have you. And I'm going to play the devil's advocate here, because there is a part of me that is shocked that it happened so quickly. There is a part of me that is shocked that, Kyle Beach is going to be kind of that left behind afterthought when this is all said and done. What's interesting to note is from Sheldon Kennedy's comments is that he didn't really comment on Joel Quenneville putting in the work the way that he did with Stan Bowman. That said, Stan Bowman's history as a GM does not make him the best option out there. We've seen what he did in the latter part of his tenure with the Chicago Blackhawks. It wasn't amazing. On top of that, I just, I think there are better options. There's some younger options. There's guys that within organizations that you could certainly ask for a chance to talk to and kind of start that new revolution of younger GMs. That all being said, I think, you do have to recognize the fact that having gone through what they went through and having, made some poor decisions in the treatment of Kyle Beach when he was within the Blackhawks organization, Stan Bowman has put in the work. And you have maybe one of the biggest advocates for sexual abuse in sports, in Sheldon Kennedy, coming out and saying, I work directly with this guy. I've seen him put in the work. I strongly advocate for him. And in saying that, it's worth noting too that before he signed the contract, it was noted, I believe, by Jeff Jackson that he, Stan Bowman did reach out to Kyle Beach and say, "Look, I'm getting another opportunity in the NHL, and I want to let you know before it all happened." And that the response seemed to be, and again, we're not a fly on the wall. We can't really, advocate for what was said, but it seemed that Kyle Beach was excited and happy for Stan Bowman to get this opportunity to kind of bounce back and get a second opportunity, right? What I also want to add to that is that now you have a guy within the NHL who's gone through the process. He was on the dark end, let's call it, of one of these abuse situations in sports, and now he's back and he has the opportunity to be the voice and the advocate for other victims or other potential victims to kind of make a new road into making it more making
accountable.
Yeah, more accountable, but making sport more accepting of everyone. Allowing for that conversation to be a conversation, and just really opening the door to that. It's somebody who's gone through the process and put himself in a spot that maybe, and hopefully he felt uncomfortable putting that work in. I hope he felt uncomfortable, because it was,
you have to be uncomfortable to do that.
100%. And it was a situation that caused discomfort for another human being. And now he's in that same situation. And I hope, and you could see him in the press conference. He was kind of moving around a little uneasy. And if you can read body language, he seemed kind of anxious in a way. But yeah, I'm not there's a part of me that is shocked that it happened so quickly. There's another part of me that is like, there's no surprise that it was the Edmonton Oilers that brought him on board the second they got the opportunity to do so. So, it gives us some news to talk about, but it also, hopefully this is the start to, more openness in the conversation when it comes to that kind of stuff happening in sports. Anyways, we're going to jump over to, here. We got a quick comment from, James over at Offside Hockey. Fellas, it's a gross hire and it amounted to a timeout. Yeah, I mean, James, like I completely agree, and I think you heard what Spencer and Peter had to say about it too. I think there is some negligence when it comes to that hire, of course. Are we all naive to think that it was never going to happen? Absolutely not. He's a name in the game. And the expectation, we were talking about him and Joel Quenneville being reinstated for the last 2 years. The fact
it was going to happen.
Yeah, the fact that there was a possibility for it to happen, at some point it was gonna come up. At some point they were gonna get reinstated, and I would not be surprised to see Joel Quenneville back in the NHL at some point this season as well.
Did you guys see the petition?
I did see the petition. Yeah. What's it up to? I know when Jesse posted it was like
3,000, I think.
Yeah, 3,000.
Yeah, I think 3.2 thousand. Yeah, it's probably not going to do anything.
No,
probably not.
The only organization I've ever seen do that is the Leafs. They hired a guy, like I think it was like 2016 or 17. He was like a scout or something like that. And then I think it was like a week or two later they fired him because they found out that he had like hate crime or not hate crime, but like discriminatory comments in the past and stuff.
That I remember.
But I mean, like Edmonton, Evander Kane, Edmonton, Corey Barry, Edmonton, Stan Bowman. It kind of just makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Well, it is worth noting too. The Columbus Blue Jackets last season with Mike Babcock didn't even get a game in before he was gone as well. Just based on his whatever you want to call it, gross negligence in terms of how he handled players as well. But I mean, it's not very often that kind of stuff does play a role in the firings, but you never know. It's a different day and age right now, and stuff like that can certainly play a part. Unfortunately, dollars speak louder than anything else, and if Stan Bowman can put a team on the ice that wins hockey games, it's highly doubtful that he's going anywhere. With that, we're gonna jump over to our Maple Leafs. As we said, not a ton of news, no big hirings, nothing like that for our Toronto Maple Leafs. But certainly the biggest news out of the week was the re-signing of Connor Dewar for a 1 year, $1.18 million contract. Spencer, I'll throw it to you first. One of the biggest conversations that we've had on this podcast is, solidifying that bottom six. Certainly, adding Dewar back to the mix does add a little bit more depth. What's your take on this signing?
I really liked Connor Dewar. Well, in the time that he was here, at 1.18, that's better than what I think it's like AFP analytics. They projected like 1.43 if he went to R. But the one thing that just throws me off is they might solidify their bottom six, but their four group's no different. Like they might add Easton Cowan, they might have Fraser Min. I think we potentially might talk about some other candidates, or maybe an Alex Nylander, maybe a couple PTOs. But is Alex Nylander, is Sammy Blais, James Rumors, are they really gonna switch it up? I'm pretty sure everyone was expecting some kind of, they rebuilt the back end, but their biggest issue in the playoffs is depth scoring, not defense. It wasn't last year. So they rebuilt their defense, but is Connor Dewar gonna move the needle? I don't think so. I mean, I love the guy. He obviously puts the work in, but I just don't know exactly what they're doing on forward.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Definitely not the go-to when it comes to depth scoring and what he would add offensively. But Peter, what are your thoughts on Connor Dewar?
I think this is one signing that I wish would happen in regards to bringing one player back. And yeah, it may not seem like he may be as productive as other fourth liners, but the speed, the energy that he brings, and the ability to get on the forecheck, I think that just kind of screams Craig Berube type hockey, in the sense that he has that mindset, he has that ability to not give up on plays, and that was the main thing that he said from his opening press conferences. Not backing down from checks, not backing away from plays. Dewar, ever since he was acquired from the Minnesota Wild, showed that he was going to be intent, and he's going to show that intensity every single time. I kind of feel like there are probably other players out there that could probably provide a little bit more depth scoring. Because I believe Dewar only had 5 points with the Leafs, 14 overall with the Wild. So 19 points all season. That is, decent fourth line production overall. I will say that, and the fact that he can play on the PK, he has the speed to try and break free and alleviate some of that pressure off Mitch Marner and get some more ice time there. While they're shorthanded, I think that's something that the Maple Leafs still need. I get that they still lack that offensive presence, but you need guys that could shut things down, and he was definitely one of those guys that could be relied on in those situations. So love the hire. I mean, not the hire, love the contract, because I still think it's good value. The Maple Leafs still have some cap space remaining. That's not to say that they could allocate that money elsewhere, because we still haven't heard about what's happening with Yanni Hakanpää. So that's the only reason why they still have that cap space. It's not confirmed. So they still have the money and wiggle room to go out there and sign a Alex Nylander or bring on guys on PTOs that could be worthwhile if that is the case. But yeah, I think he was a good fit on that fourth line. I thought that he gelled really well with, I believe it was still Cameron Reeves. Not sure. I would hope that was still going to be the same case this time around, if that's going to be the fourth line, but we'll see what happens, because there's still the rest of the offseason to go forward and to see how things will unfold.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, take it for what you will. Dewar scored 11 goals and had 19 points for a career high last season in 74 games. So, I mean, offensively, certainly not the offensive output you would want from a depth scorer. We will talk in a little bit here about PTOs, possible PTOs that the Leafs could sign. So there could be a shift in the lineup as well. I still believe that the Leafs are going to make a move, whether it's moving a guy like David Kampf or something like that to allocate a little bit more salary as well. But It's a solid signing. It's one of those guys that you want to have on your fourth line that can add some speed, throw the body around, isn't afraid to get into the grimy areas, and I think that's why you see him get just over $1 million for the 1 year contract. Obviously, he went to arbitration as well, so it's somebody that will add a little spice to that bottom six, but not a guy that really fixes the problem, as Spencer said, when it comes to the depth scoring for this team. But I should note, as Leaf fans, a lot of us do require some help after the playoffs. So with that said, the Hockey Podcast Network, as well as Sticks in the Six, is sponsored by BetterHelp. Do you ever find yourself comparing your life to another friend or somebody else, whether it's through Instagram or, in this case, fandom of another team? Well, therapy can help you focus on what you want instead of what others have, so you can start living your best life. Now, while I haven't personally used BetterHelp, I have used different allocations of therapy to help me get through certain roadblocks in my life. If you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. Stop comparing and start focusing with BetterHelp. Visit betterhelp.com/THPN today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/THPN. Again, the Hockey Podcast Network, as well as Sticks in the Six, is sponsored by BetterHelp, and we always advocate for mental health on this podcast. So we push anybody that is going through anything right now. Stop comparing. Look for somebody to help you out. Get in touch with somebody at BetterHelp using code THPN for 10% off your first month. Back to our Maple Leafs. Something you noted, Peter, as we were getting ready for this show, is we talked a lot about the signings last week. We're talking about Connor Dewar this week. One of the signings that kind of got lost in all of that, especially with this Yanni Hakanpää mystery that seems to be going on, is the signing of Matt Murray. The third, I would say, the third string goalie behind Stolarz, behind Joseph Wall, and of course, where he mixes up with guys like Hildeby and Akhtiamov in the minors. That's something that remains unsaid. But Matt Murray is back as a Maple Leaf. Health-wise, we're kind of unsure where he stands. Ability, we're kind of unsure of where that stands. But they got him for a good price at, I believe it was $775. So, Peter, what's your thoughts on Matt Murray coming back as that third guy? Did the Leafs carry 3 goalies this season, or what are you thinking?
Yeah, I think that, the fact that he was able to come back, recover from surgery, I think that was a good sign that hopefully the injury woes are behind him. And yeah, you look at his numbers in the AHL, probably wasn't that appealing. He went 1-2, but I think he had like a 4.0 goals against average, .864 save percentage. You would probably think that, he's an NHL goalie. He should probably have good numbers in the AHL. Yeah, well, he's missed a lot of time. He's going to take some time to get back in the game form and everything like that. But he didn't make big time saves in the games that he played last year. He did show some promise in terms of overcoming that hurdle and the adversity that he's had injury wise. So hopefully that's a big step in the right direction. As for, the Maple Leafs carrying 3 goalies, I'm actually got something coming out tomorrow, or, it's out right now if you're watching this tomorrow. I do think that the Maple Leafs should carry 3 goalies. I don't think it's a bad idea. You run the situation of putting Murray on waivers, going down to the minors, risk somebody picking him up, just like what happened with Martin Jones last year. I think that if he does clear, you're kind of safe, but at the same time, is the team really going to pick him up? There's I think a $100,000 bonus involved with this. If I'm not mistaken, that's why it's $875. It's $775 plus $100,000 bonus on top of that.
Yeah, kind of that deterrent, right? They did the same thing with Martin Jones.
Exactly. So hopefully that will ward some teams off if they are in a cap crunch and they need a goalie. But who's to say that doesn't happen, right? Someone can pluck him up off waivers and be like, yep, we're going to take him. Then that throws a wrench into the whole goalie situation where you don't have the health of Joseph Wall if where it needs to be. That's the big thing, because we know how great he could play, but if he's healthy or if he's not healthy and he's injured, Stolarz is going to overtake the starting role. Nothing wrong with that, but he doesn't have the experience as a starter. Couple good seasons as a backup, but you need to balance out workload between him and Wall. I think that was going to be the best case scenario. And then if Murray's gone, then you're left with Murray and calling up one of Hildeby and Akhtiyamov, most likely Hildeby, because he's got that pro experience under him in North America. If Murray does get sent on waivers, then you run the risk of bumping Akhtiyamov down to possibly the ECHL. You have a Murray-Hildeby tandem, but that doesn't help Murray because Hildeby's already solidified himself as a starter for next season. And he's going to be on the backup side of things. So it's like, where do you go from here? I think it's better to just keep him as a third-string goalie, like you would an additional forward or defense. If you could carry him on the roster, keep him. The Maple Leafs have shown that they have no issue carrying 3 goalies like they did last season. And it kind of helps you out because you don't have that certainty that Wall's going to be healthy or not. That's going to be the big thing. So that's like a glimpse as to what my side is for Murray. I don't see an issue with carrying 3 goalies because you don't know what's going to happen at that point.
Spencer, what are your thoughts on the possibility that the Leafs carry 3 goalies and just having Matt Murray's presence in the? I mean, he's a Stanley Cup winner, right? So he's a guy that has been there before, but having that sort of presence within the organization.
Well, personally, I thought it was going to be Martin Jones. Like I always thought the Leafs were going to have a 3 goalie system, especially Joseph Wall. I thought it was going to be Martin Jones. When it was Matt Murray, I thought instantly, I don't remember his name, but I thought instantly of that LA Dodgers player that I think suffers from like schizophrenia, and the Dodgers just sign him every single season so then he can get the benefits from the MLB. Not saying Matt Murray suffers with schizophrenia, but I did hear, I think it was David Alter said there was internal talk that this was kind of like a reward. Matt Murray stuck it out. Mm-hmm. He basically like did everything that Toronto asked him to do and recovered with their team. So it's basically like this is his home, obviously, or not really Thunder Bay is, but this is his home now. This is his dad's favorite team. Like this is everything to him. So regardless if he plays, it's also an insurance policy for the Leafs. If he does get hurt, then that's almost $1 million on the cap. The other thing I've noticed is if you look at cap wages, which is the news site, Puckpedia, they all have Connor Timmins listed on the NHL site. If you remove him and then obviously keep Matt Murray, you're basically clearing up like what 400,000, 500,000 roughly in between. I think 1.2 to 8 or whatever. So I don't see a problem with it. I don't know why people are. I get why, because it's Matt Murray and like the hate around Matt Murray, but I personally don't see the reason as to why people are so mad. Even if he plays 10 games a year, like he didn't do that bad last year or the year prior. Was it last year? Yeah, it was last year at the start of the year, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, real prior, and he Tim Samsonov, right? And he didn't do that bad. People were praising him because he had good like actual fundamentals. He's a big guy, so if he plays 10 games and he wins 6 of them, like doesn't that only help the Leafs? And I'm not 100% sure on the other goalie. I don't even know how to say his name. The one you guys were mentioning, the one that's coming to North America. But just do the Toronto Marlies.
Yeah,
mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'll never probably be able to say that. Just seems like a tongue twister to me. But does the Marlies have, or do the Marlies have the best like young goalie tandem? Like
I would say one of the best right now.
If Akhtiyamov can come over and do what he's done, at the MHL level, they could certainly have one of the best tandems in the AHL.
Mm-hmm.
So then obviously, like if that works out, then Joseph Wool's probably gone after his 3-year extension, right? At that point, he'll the beast, and
so,
yeah.
Depends on how things work out too. If he does get to that health level or he is healthy, then there's no way that you would probably get rid of. You probably have to move on from one of Akhtiyamov or Hildeby, but then having one of Wall and one of those two does seem like an enticing option at the NHL level.
I'm not gonna lie to you. I'm pretty sure I just had butterflies in my stomach thinking about the Leafs actually having 3 homegrown goalies.
Yeah,
that hasn't happened since James Reimer, really.
Long time.
That's been a conversation piece of this podcast for a long time. Is the Leafs finding a way to get homegrown goalies, and this is. I know it's crazy to say, but this is a good problem to have in 3 years. To have the idea that Wall will be coming up on his contract. Akhtiamov and Hildeby will likely be hitting their prime as goaltenders. To have them be able to make that jump to the NHL. Even if you run with that tandem, you maybe have like a Boston situation where you have one guy come up in the next 2 years. Let's say Stolarz is only there for a year. He's 30. Is he 30, 31? I think he's 30 years old.
Yeah, I think 30. Yeah.
Yeah.
So maybe Stolarz, he gets a kick at the can in Toronto, and then maybe you bring up Hildeby in the next couple of seasons, and then all of a sudden you have Hildeby, who has the NHL experience, now going up with Akhtiamov as your 1-2. I mean, it's a pretty great problem to have when you think about the potential of the goaltending in the next 4 to 5 years for the Maple Leafs.
And let's not forget too that when the Maple Leafs drafted Hildeby, he was an overager at that point. So he's already got that development curve step ahead of all the other prospects or other goaltending prospects that they felt confident that he could probably take a big step forward. And look what he did in his draft plus one season. You look at or draft plus two, depending on how many times he was passed over in the draft. But look at what he did in his final season in the SHL before he came over to North America. Look what he did last season. Absolutely phenomenal stuff. So that progression is showing very much right now, and not necessarily saying that he could make the jump sooner than later, but there's a possibility. And if he's going to be hungry, who's to say that maybe next year there's not a roster spot with his name on it?
Yeah, no, absolutely.
I thought that they were going to play him this year against the Sharks when they went back to back with Martin Jones. It would have been the perfect time.
That, yeah.
And also the other thing, I wrote about this today a little bit, but actually I think it's coming out tomorrow. But regardless, I still think the best thing about Tree Living is Kyle Dubas built the forward group and solidified those like late first round picks. Well, Tree Living loves the blue line. Yeah. Obviously, Kyle Dubas was responsible for the goalies too, but like Brett Living, what's his name, Ben Danford, he was on the Leafs Nation podcast, morning take or whatever, talking about how he wanted to be Chris Tanev, and now his mentor is Jake Muzzin. If we get a homegrown Jake Muzzin or Chris Tanev, like I think the Leafs are going to win it all. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Like if Brad Friedman can build that defense core from the draft, then the Leafs actually get the forward depth that they need, like the Easton Cowens and stuff, to produce on ELCs. Like Toronto could actually do this. It seems crazy to say, but like,
mm-hmm. There's a lot of potential there in the next few years, and I wouldn't say it's one of the top 5 prospect pools, but they certainly have a pipeline that has all the pieces: the Topi Niamelas, the Easton Cowens, the Ben Danfords, the Akhtiamovs, the you name it. The Leafs have the pieces within the organization already that, as you said, Spencer, give them the next few years, and this is a team that has the potential to go on a serious run. And I know we say that every offseason and we get excited about it every offseason, but we've never seen the team actually put all the pieces together in their pipeline and move it up as a unit, right? And that's the difference that they have right now, is that they're moving them up as a unit.
Mm-hmm. And I think the other thing that is exciting is, like, Toronto has never done the thing that other teams do. So, like, there was Colorado. They had their star players, but then they had guys come up on ELCs, right? Like, Toronto doesn't do that. Toronto basically, like, look at Nick Robertson. Like, they basically wasted so much time with him. They're doing it with Matthew Nyes. They're probably going to do it with Easton Cowan. Brad Tree Living seems to have done that in Calgary. So if we have guys, like 5 guys on the team making $900,000 on ELCs, like, Toronto's going to have loads of cap room that no one talks about because they only talk about 4 forwards. And Tavares is coming off the books. We don't know about Marner. Like, things could actually really open up. And I mean, I never actually thought about this until now, but that just excites me more for like 2-3 years down the road than it does this season. Like, at this point, I'm admitting on this podcast, this year could be a wash, and I think I'd be fine with it because the next couple of years are going to be exciting.
I like it. I like the take. Yeah, absolutely. Before we get to our next ad read here, guys, just a quick note on the bottom 6. We talk about the cap. We've talked about the lack of depth on the bottom 6 in terms of offensive production. That said, the bottom 6 is getting a little crowded. And Peter, we haven't heard anything about Nick Robertson since the trade request. We don't know what's going on there. Obviously, guys like Dewar are signed. You've got Pontus Holmberg, you've got Alex Steves, who should be a potential lock for the lineup this year. You have Easton Cowan, Fraser Mint, and guys that want to make the lineup this year. Peter, what are your thoughts on the bottom six? Are we a little too crowded down there to make another move, or what's happening with the Leafs bottom six?
Yeah, the bottom six is definitely getting up there in terms of like quality depth, but have that mentality that, kind of fits the mold of Craig Berube. You have obviously the top six is kind of set in stone right now with the addition of Domi and Nyes on that left side, but now you have Bobby McMahon, you have Pontus Holmberg, some of those homegrown players that could play multiple positions. You can use them in different ways coming up. So if you have Pontus Holmberg and Bobby McMahon as fixtures on that third line, that is absolutely phenomenal. But then that kind of plays into the whole Nick Robertson thing. Where is he going to be right now? Because now Connor Dewar is signed. You have David Camp on the fourth line. You have Ryan Reeves, who looked fantastic in that second half. And if we could get another 2 more years of that Ryan Reeves, of that first half or that back half of his first year of the contract, then that fourth line can be really strong. Then again, if you can improve on David Camp, fine, move him out, get a cheaper piece that could be a little bit more productive, that could do what he does. Great. But yeah, you're starting to run into that problem where, you can't necessarily give Robertson a contract unless it's going to be a sign and trade kind of thing. And then he plays and it's still the same thing where you give him that opportunity and it's still more of the same. Then what are you going to do right there? You can't risk losing one of your other pieces that what you already have, and then risk losing them instead of Nick Robertson at this point. I hate to give up on him. I think you should still give him an opportunity, but with Dewar signing, I think that was going to be the big X factor. If Dewar wasn't signed, at least Robertson could be on the fourth line or at least move his way up to show that he can play on the roster. But now that Dewar's in the fold and that left side is basically, Nyes / Domi in your top six, they could rotate in and out before or first and second line. Then you have McMahon and then Dewar on that fourth line. Where does that leave Nick Robertson? He can play the right side, but even again, that right side is pretty crowded at that point. So it's like, what are you going to do right now on that? You have Nylander and Marner as your top six. You have Calle Jarnkrok, who could basically play any forward position, but you could use him on the right side. And then you have Reeves. Still crowded. So someone's going to have to come out. And, if Nick Robertson is going to be that player where he's going to be coming in and out of the roster again, it's just not fair to him.
Yeah, and Spencer, this is kind of where I talked about the potential for another Leafs move at some point before the season starts. I mean, you've got a guy like David Kampf, you've got a guy like Calle Jarnkrok. If you want to get Nick Robertson into the lineup, which seems to be the case with Brad Treliving, especially after the request that he wants to find a way to get him in the lineup. This bottom six is overcrowded. They need that physicality in the bottom six, but they also need some depth scoring. And Nick Robertson, fortunately for the Leafs, does provide that offensive side as well.
Yeah, I think I did write, like you guys are both Calle Jarnkrok. Well, you mentioned Calle Jarnkrok, obviously, Peter, but I did mention him as one of the options that they could move out just for cap space in general. I would suggest one thing that I thought was interesting. I saw this on Twitter. Obviously, they just hired the amateur scout Leach from Dallas.
Mm-hmm.
If Nick Robertson feels most comfortable, say he goes to Brad and says, like, Dallas is the option, not that he gets a choice, but Dallas is the choice for me. Toronto's winning that trade. Like, if they get a prospect,
he knows who's in the system.
Yeah, like that just seems like a no-brainer. Like if it's too crowded, it just seems like a no-brainer. Like, I don't want to move on from Nick. I remember like COVID hype, Nick Robertson bubble. Like, I was in love with this guy. I still like him. He to me, he's like mini, like, not Austin Matthews in terms of the play, but like he's basically the second unit power play of Austin Matthews. Like, give him the puck and let him shoot it. But it never seemed like Sheldon Keefe did that. I don't know exactly what Berube will do. Another suggestion or another thought that I thought of with Nick Robertson was for go from St. Louis, Craig Berube's guy. Like, if he slid into the bottom six, that would solidify a wing spot. The other option, obviously, you mentioned, Andrew, is not Peter, is Alex Steves. Like, Steves seems like it's time, or else he's going to be eventually frustrated and go on out. I think I kind of like the prospects. I think it's a good problem to have, or the goalie store. I think it's a good problem to have that as much depth. I just think that the issue with it is we're so accustomed to seeing or thinking what Sheldon Keefe would do, like the Yarncroaks, the David Camps. Those are like his new Alex Kerfoot's, right? So maybe this year Yarncroak will be sitting out. That's the thing that I am looking forward to most of training camp is like before they add, like say a PTO or whatever. I'm curious to see what Greg Berube will actually do in terms of what roster construction. Like Peter said, the top 6 is pretty much solidified. So I'm not sure. I did just write actually one where I suggested potentially Nick Cousins because he's got that Max Domi style, rat mentality. Him on a line with Connor Dewar and Ryan Reeves, they'd be the most annoying line in the league. So, and to one last thing to say, match on yours, Peter. I think I would take Ryan Reeves' fighting in the beginning of the season and his overall play on the ice at the end of the season. If he fought as much as he did in the beginning, like I think like Scotiabank, like move over suits. Yeah, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
that's exactly what you brought him in to do. Exactly. No, 100% agree.
Yeah, no, absolutely scary, dude. Guys, before we get to our last point here, just a quick word from our other sponsors over at DraftKings Sportsbook. Know the beautiful thing about being a sports fan? There's only like 2 days the whole year without a game. 2. With so much happening and so much action, that makes just about every day game day at DraftKings Sportsbook. It's super easy for first-timers to get started. Try betting on something simple like picking a team to win. Go to DraftKings Sportsbook app, select your team, and place your first bet. It really couldn't be any easier, any simpler. In fact, if you look at it now, I'm just looking at the futures for the Stanley Cup. Edmonton at plus 850 is the favorite. Our Toronto Maple Leafs are 4th at plus 1,300. I don't know how realistic that is at this point. But you can place those bets today. And if you are new to DraftKings, you got to check this out. New customers bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets instantly. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now and use code THPN. That's code THPN for new customers to get $150 in bonus bets instantly when you bet just $5. Only on DraftKings. The crown is yours. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or in West Virginia, visit www.1800gambler.net. In New York, call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467-369. In Connecticut, help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org. Please play responsibly on behalf of Boot Hill Casino and Resort. 21 plus age varies by jurisdiction. Bonus bets expire 168 hours after issuance. Deposit and eligibility restrictions apply. See terms and responsible gaming resources at tdkng.co/base. Well, boys, the last part I want to touch on is actually a piece that, Spencer, you just brought up and released over at the Hockey Writers. Possible PTOs for the Toronto Maple Leafs. We see them every year with every team almost. Why don't you take it away with your 3 possible PTOs? I'm really a big fan of your last one, so throw it out there, Spencer.
Yeah, so I wrote a couple articles about players that I thought Toronto could target, so I tried to stay away from them. That was the Sammy Blais, the Alex Nylanders. My first target was actually Jared Tenorti as a replacement for the Yanni Hakanpää. We're not sure what's going on with his knee. If he can't play, even if he technically couldn't play, I think that you might see Toronto keep him for the 1.5 on LTI. But he kind of plays his game the same way, except he's obviously not as skilled and not as like he doesn't have as much of hockey IQ as Tanev and Hakanpää do. He would obviously slide in as your 7th defenseman. He's only played like 45 games, I think, is his career high. The second one, as I mentioned before, is Nick Cousins. I personally was not a fan of Nick Cousins, but I was also not a fan of Max Domi. Like, I liked the idea of Max Domi, but like I hated Max Domi when he was on the Leafs, the Habs. Like, I don't like those style players, but when they're on your team, it's just like you're glued to the TV, ready for the next move. So I think like next year, if they brought him in, like maybe Berube slides him between Ryan Reeves and Max Domi once, and and then the last one, as you mentioned, you really liked it. I think that this would be a great idea. Would be James Van Riemsdyk. Still looking for a contract. Obviously spent 6-7 years with the Leafs, and he had 38 points last year with Boston. Toronto puts him in the right role, like you were talking about, Peter. Like, there could still technically be a spot on the right side Like he's an older guy. He doesn't need to worry about what side he plays. He just gets to play, right? So, and plus he played with Matthews, Marner, and Nylander in his last year at Toronto. I just think would be the fit's there. I just hope it's like Daniel Sprung. I was just constantly every day like Toronto sign Daniel Sprung, sign. I know that he's not good defensively, but it's just I just get stuck on these names. I'm just like these guys would fit so good with like what Toronto absolutely needs.
Yeah,
and then it just seems like they passed by. So I just really hope like that Toronto actually, maybe even views this piece and is like, oh, James Van Riemsdyk, like, who I thought that, you know what I mean? Like it just is the fit's perfect. So what do you guys think?
Man, little known secret. Toronto Maple Leafs actually love the information that comes from Sticks in the Six podcast. We call ourselves the outside insiders. So we've had a few takes that have gone well. I called the Giordano signing a few years back, or trade rather. So it's hopefully it's there, because I actually, when I talked about five potential free agents that the Leafs could sign, James Van Riemsdyk was on my list as well over at the Hockey Writers. You said it, the fit is there. The guy has not slowed down. I mean, aside from not getting as much playing time, he still put up 38 points. And what is the need of the Leafs right now? The need is depth scoring. There's a guy that could be your third line guy and still put up a 15 goal, 40 point season, no questions asked, and be the net front presence on the first power play unit.
And for like $1 million.
For $1 million. I completely agree that the fit is there. Peter, what are your thoughts on those three? And do you have any maybe wild card PTO candidates for the Toronto Maple Leafs?
Yeah, I mean, obviously I don't want to mention the ones that you said that you were going to, Nylander, Blaze, because those seem like obvious fits, but I do like the JVR one. Again, like you said, Forbesy, the secondary depth scoring, that's going to be huge. And, considering most of the time the Maple Leafs, they could crash the net, they could get to the middle of the ice, but they get those one and done chances. They don't have those rebound opportunities. JVR has, we've seen him time and time again with the Maple Leafs, how he's in tight, he gets those deflections, he gets those rebounds, he can clear up the garbage in front of the net, or get those rebound opportunities and get those quote unquote garbage goals, but goals will go at that point regardless. So he's definitely that type of player that could improve the offense a little bit more. And that was something that's lacked over time, where you have like a very strong, steady net front presence. Saw that a bit from Tyler Bertuzzi, but then again, which Bertuzzi were you going to get next season if you signed him? The first half or the last 20, 30 games? I really think JVR is the front runner. I do like the Tenorti one as well. I think that, you mentioned it in your piece, Spencer, that, he hits everything in sight. It may seem like easy. No, it's not, because it's very difficult to make timely hits and not put yourself in a bad position. And that's something specifically that, I've talked with other prospect writers, everything like that. Like, if you're able to hit and not get out of position and make it timely and you're not caught, that's basically what you need. And the Maple Leafs, they're starting to get a little bit more physical on the back end. I think Tenorti would be a great fit there.
It's funny that you mentioned that, because on the Luke Gazzik podcast, Simone Milkman Benoit actually talked about that. He said the hardest part about hitting isn't the fact that you have to time the hit; it's the fact that you're timing the hit against the player who you're hitting.
Yeah.
So I could hit Andrew and he could take it, but I could hit you and you could embellish it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And also, Benoit doesn't play with anything under his equipment. He just wears a jock and underwear. So basically his top of his shoulders are calloused because the shoulder pads are rubbing constantly. So when he goes for those huge hits, he says it hurts his skin, provides him probably just as much pain as it does hurting the other guy, winding him. So his top of his shoulders actually don't have, they're just calloused as if your fingers playing guitar or whatever, which I think is just crazy because that guy throws huge hits. But yeah, he talked about all that in the podcast, and he said you go to hit some smaller finesse guy, well, they're probably going to try and embellish it a little bit more, so then they kind of pull you on the play. And I thought that was a little interesting about Tenorti too. Is he'll hit people, but you kind of have to do it strategically. So
yeah,
but yeah, I don't know. I just think I didn't like the Brad Treliving hire, but after one season, actually, as soon as they signed Bertuzzi and Domi, I was just amped. And then, you had mentioned it, Bertuzzi tried to be if they double stack the screen in front with Tavares and Van Riemsdyk, they're scoring goals.
Yeah,
Bertuzzi couldn't do that. So if they put Van Riemsdyk with Tavares, they're kind of like I don't know. Tavares is like James Van Riemsdyk light. Yeah, it's like it's just like you could run a 5-man unit, all forwards, and you'd be fine. You wouldn't need a defenseman to run that power play. Speaking of which, who do you think's running the first power play? Riley or Oliver Ekman-Larsson? Or Awesome Possum, as Don Cherry calls him?
I want to say OEL because I think during the playoffs, didn't Montour get replaced by OEL on the first power play unit?
Yeah, for
at least I've seen a little bit of that, or like they kind of rotated in and out here and there. And unless Riley actually figures out how to get point shots across from the top of the blue line, you got to give it to OEL because even though he may not connect, he gets it on net. That's the main thing. You need a shooter on that side, and I think OEL may fit the bill as being that top power play puck mover. That's my early prediction going into the season.
I think they started off with Riley until OEL gets his footing under him in Toronto. Toronto, we talk about it all the time. It's a different beast playing in front of Toronto fans. It's a different beast playing in Toronto. Some of these new players, it takes them time to kind of get their footing under them playing in front of that home crowd. And I think you'll see Riley. I mean, Riley's been their guy for so long, even though my biggest pet peeve is him hitting the shin pads in front of him 9 times out of 10. I think they give him the opportunity to turn it around before they ship it off to OEL. But I do think at some point this season, you will see OEL take over.
Hopefully the new dad powers kick in.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, Peter.
I was just about to say, hopefully, you see time and time again about like players becoming like, first-time dads or dads and everything like that. Hopefully that dad energy kicks in and he has like a massive season going forward.
Well, he's going to have to teach his kid how to take a point shot. So hopefully he teaches him the right way.
Hopefully he also learns how to hold his own. I think that was the most, like, me and my brother, we watch like games separately now because we don't live in the same house, but like we'll text constantly about the game. And that's probably like the number one text message that's sent is like puck's there, Riley can't hold his own. He can't throw his body against the boards and keep the zone. So like it kind of also ruins the momentum.
Yeah.
I would also kind of be interested to see Jake McCabe.
Yeah.
Like
he's got that ball.
All they need is like anyone like Nylander, Marner, Matthews, any of them could be a Thomas Carberlet and just pass the puck. You just need an actual like Dion Phaneuf, Jake McCabe that just doesn't matter if there's 6 bodies in front, the puck's find its way through. And I mean,
but
it would be interesting.
He's a perfect example too of somebody that took time to get his footing under him in Toronto. Obviously, he had stuff going on, like his family was out of town and whatever. But he's a perfect example. Yet last year in the second half of the season, we saw a completely different Jake McCabe than we had, in this previous little run with the Leafs. So,
and even with the injuries piled up, he took those minutes and he ran away with it.
Yeah,
and pucks to the face.
Yeah, that's right. That's
like 2 in 1 week. And I don't know if you guys are wrapping up, but I just have one more thought for you guys or a question for you. Do you think Liljegren's gone, or do you think that signing was insurance in case they didn't get anyone, or because $3 million for him is a lot, like for what he's done? I think.
Yeah, I think it's still a possibility that he could move. I don't think it's out of the question. I think it's just seeing what you have when the season starts, because basically now he has that spot is basically his, that third line pairing role where he could probably be paired up with either Simon Benoit or OEL. I think that's going to be huge. We'll see what happens with that, but I do think that it's still a possibility that he could get moved. Just don't know exactly when.
Having seen the Leafs ship off players way too early and see them go on to have success elsewhere, I hope they don't do it because I still have this gut feeling about Liljegren. That said, like, he's had his opportunities and he just seems to be hitting this wall. And I agree for what he's done thus far. $3 million is a lot. I think he is a prime trade target if the Leafs are looking to make a move and ship out a defenseman. That said, I think they start the year with him, and I think they give him a solid opportunity to kind of steal a spot on the second pairing.
He could also be a name that you could probably move at the deadline again in a better asset for a deep run.
Yeah, or like cap clearance like
Yeah.
San Jose, I just instantly think of San Jose when I think of Liljegren being traded. Like he could be top line there, or even second pairing and basically just collect the minutes and obviously make Leafs fans hate the fact that he turned out to be good. But I think the thing that's interesting to me is like you have people like putting their rosters online and it's basically the same defense that you'd think like Riley Tanev, whatever. But I'm curious to see what Berube is going to do because he had like Torrey Krug, Justin Falk, like he had so many options, Colin Parenko, Alex Pietrangelo, and he basically like chose defense and stuck by them. So maybe he puts Liljegren on the second pairing with OEL, and maybe that's just it. So maybe $3 million doesn't seem so bad if he's producing, maybe 40 points, playing 20, 21 minutes a game. I don't know exactly, but I think like when you talked about that wall that he had, sometimes I just think it could have been Sheldon Keefe. Like maybe it was just annoying to hear the same coach for so many years, and basically like you had Mark Giordano solidified you, and then Mark Giordano basically. His career is pretty much over, and then you're just basically rounding him in and out in the playoffs, like basically flipping a coin if he's in the lineup. So it'll do better to Berube.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Some great questions there, Spencer, to close out. Some great topics to talk about. In Leafland, there's always something to talk about. But before we close out here, let our listeners know a little bit about Spencer and what to expect from you over at the Hockey Writers.
Yeah, so I'm not sure if I'm allowed to mention this. I think I'm allowed, but I also write for the Hockey News. So you can catch me at the Hockey Writers. I cover Toronto. I do a little Ottawa work. And I do some news and rumor pages for or columns for the Islanders and Wild. Not that there's been a lot since I took over. I took over just after free agency. But yeah, I'm probably just I think I'm gonna do a piece on I think Liljegren and San Jose and how that's a fit. And I think I'm going to do a projected lineup if the old prof hasn't taken it, because I think he might have already called that one. I'll have to go back and look. But other than that, I'm just probably going to count down the days until Leafs hockey. It's kind of boring as heck. So I write basically, I'll write like 2 articles for the, Utah. I cover Utah. I cover the Kings. I do a little bit of work on their main site for the Hockey News. And then and it's basically like I'm sitting here 10 o'clock in the morning. I'm just like, the heck am I supposed to write about? And if there's no news, I'm searching like Toronto Maple Leafs news and going like page 6, like, okay, what can I find? Yeah. Thankfully, I got most of the ideas that I generated from like the hockey or the Leafs Nation. Like I'll read their stuff and it's like, oh, okay, maybe I could do this angle. But yeah, I'll probably just be doing the same as you guys, just kicking and enjoying some time, and then, booster up around August.
Beautiful. Well, being a Leafs podcast, we also tend to be fans of the Blue Jays, and I don't know if you guys saw this, but do either of you remember Reese McGuire?
Oh, yeah. He was my favorite player on the Jays.
Okay, did you see what Cal Quantrill said to him today in the game between the Rockies and Red Sox?
Yep, no. That's making its way around right now.
He as he was walking off, he turned to Reese McGuire and he said, "You jacked off in a fucking parking lot, you dumb fuck." So, goof of the week is, depends on what side you want to take, but Cal Quantrill or Reese McGuire, one of them gets the goof of the week. Otherwise, Spencer, it was great having you on, man. We really appreciate it. We love your work over at the Hockey Writers. Yeah. Of course, you mentioned you also work for the Hockey News, so check them out there as well, folks. Again, if you're looking for tickets to any event this summer, those Jays, in fact, you can check out SeatGeek and get $20 off your first purchase with code STICKSINTHE6. Otherwise, because Elon and X are not letting us go live on X anymore, make sure you hit subscribe over at YouTube. Like I said, Spencer, it was fantastic to have you on, buddy. We hope to have you on again at some point.
Thanks, fellas.
And we'll be sure to talk some more Leaf hockey as we get into the final stretch of this summer before we kick off the 2024-25 season. Until next week, boys.
Go Leafs.
Go Leafs, episode 167 in the books.